But the key is that Bitcoin is now being adopted by more and more people. There's big money involved. I think FTX is a major issue because it really creates mistrust in the crypto industry. But again, from mistrust, regulation will come, which will create transparency. And once you have transparency, that's where real trust is built, right? I mean, before this, we didn't have transparency and we were just hoping that everything was fine. But we know now that's not the case. And so you have that transparency that comes from regulation. And that's what's going to drive big money to invest, in my opinion, in Bitcoin and in Ethereum.
Hello and welcome to Crypto IQ. Today we look at what professional trader Gareth Soloway thinks is in store for Bitcoin and Ethereum as the financial markets continue to suffer in the aftermath of the pandemic, as well as the more recent collapse of crypto exchanges.
I think when you look at Bitcoin, like weirdly enough, if you don't get regulation, I think you could argue that cryptos will eventually go to zero, right? Because think about this, after FTX, and you had a bunch of big money. I mean, Tom Brady, Gisele Bundchen, Kevin O'Leary. I mean, all of these big players were involved in FTX. And now everyone saw that blow up, and there's no sports stars, there's no celebrities, there's no big money that is willing to go near any crypto anymore until they have some sort of transparency, because it's not worth their fortunes. It's not worth their reputations now, right? You have some major tarnishing on reputations. I know there's lawsuits being filed and all that stuff. So the question is are there enough small investors to really create that push in Bitcoin to have it go to 100,000, to have it go to $1 million? And again, I don't know that. And I think that's my biggest concern, is that without that transparency, without that regulation, you're not going to lure the big money in that can really drive it to the upside. So number one, I think that there's a lot of politicians that secretly have crypto holdings. I know some have said they do, but I think it's more than we realize. Mainly because they're on the cutting edge of knowing what's going on. They see the revolution out there. They see what the blockchain is going to be. They understand some of these big money players getting in. And I also think that, you look at places like Texas in the US. Texas is a massive place where there's mining going on. There's huge amounts of jobs based on the blockchain. So Texas being a huge state, you have a lot of politicians just there alone that are pushing for good quality regulation, and they want the blockchain, they want crypto to survive. So you can go to other states as well, and it's really starting to spread. The crypto market, in terms of the economy, is exponentially growing year on year. It's still relatively small, but it is growing bigger and bigger. Like, look at things like Microsoft, other companies out there. They've already launched side businesses or incorporated crypto and blockchain into things that they're doing, which is now becoming more and more dependent on that blockchain. So there's a lot of similarities with it. I mean, you talk about the earth-shattering kind of event that Lehman Brothers was in terms of shaking the industry to its core. And I think you've seen that in crypto. I mean, this is really the big earthquake if you're looking for one. And then what you're looking at also is how does the crypto market come out of this? And one of the interesting things, when you look at how an exchange in crypto is virtually the same as a bank is in the economy, right? So, the banks obviously lend, they give you leverage, they give you all these kind of things to do. Well, that's what the exchanges do essentially. So there's a lot of similarities in what they are and ultimately how they failed, right? Lehman Brothers took risks that they shouldn't have taken. They leveraged themselves up way too much. FTX did the same thing. So there's a lot of those similarities. And then you look at things like the charts and you start to say, okay, did the market bottom when Lehman Brothers collapsed? And the answer is no. It took about 5 to 6 months to bottom. So you start saying, okay, if this is a Lehman Brothers moment, when does this give us? Does this finally give us that timeline when crypto could bottom? And I think it does. And I also think that if you look back to the 2008, 2009 period, you saw these banks misbehaving like a lot of these exchanges are, Celsius, Voyager, and now FTX. And you saw regulation come out of it. What was it? It was Dodd-Frank, right? So you have that functionality, which is now likely going to come out in the crypto markets. And so again, what I did was I looked at the charts and I said, okay, well, when Lehman Brothers occurred, how long did it take for the markets, the S&P to bottom? That was 5 to 6 months. And then I also looked and I said, okay, well, what type of fall did we see following? In the following 5 to 6 months, how much did the S&P fall? The answer is about 40 to 45%. So if you
Wow.
take 40 to 45% away from the current levels on Bitcoin, it puts you right around $9,000 as a potential low. Because basically, if you look at the last 20 years, or at least since 2009, every little hiccup that we've seen, the Fed has come to the rescue, right?
Yeah.
So we're kind of like a child that is wearing a helmet and a body armor, and like we can fall down a hill, we can fall off a cliff, and we're fine. We're just like, oh, no big deal. Well, guess what? That security measure, that safety measure is being taken off because the Fed clearly cannot print like they were in the previous cycles now that we have inflation rising, right? So the average investor is just thinking like, okay, we're in a bear market, but by January or February of 2023, we'll be making new all-time highs, so no big deal. That's what they've experienced, right? That's the experience for the last 13 years, at least, if not the last 20. So you have this scenario where people don't think it's real. They don't think the Fed is really taking off the bumpers here. And it's going to be a shock when the Fed, every investor and even big money is going to say, okay, Fed, we're in a recession, please start your printing again. And they're going to say, we can't. Inflation's 4 or 5% still. We can't print. And that's going to be the reckoning day where people freak out. So what I do is I don't try to pick the bottom, but I realize that I want to be in Bitcoin longer term. And so when we're down here, I've already basically accumulated what I would consider to be 1/6 of what I hope to hold in the longer term. And the reason I do that, even expecting that it could go down to 9,000, is that, if I'm wrong, I don't want to be sitting here with no Bitcoin, right? So I'm willing to buy a little bit here, then buy a little bit more here, then a little bit more here and here and here. And the idea is that by dollar cost averaging into my full position, I'm able to kind of mitigate the risk of missing the trade while also mitigating the risk of, if it goes to 9K, I don't want to be all in at 17,000, for instance, right? So it's a way of adjusting and handling risk. And I think it's a really smart investment decision for most people to do, is to just inch into positions, right? You don't know the future. We can all think we know the future, but we honestly don't. And so you kind of have to mitigate those risks. I mean, you could argue that Ethereum is a little bit more volatile than Bitcoin even, right? That moves up and down. It moves up more than Bitcoin percentage wise, but also can drop. But I think the key is like, I want to know if Ethereum's a security, what does that mean? And I don't think we know that yet. So I think the key is the chart itself does not look horrendous. One of the positives about the Ethereum chart is that the June low has not been taken out yet versus what we've seen in Bitcoin. Bitcoin has taken out the June low. So I think that's a small positive. I think that Ethereum will thrive once there's some more transparency, but it's still one of those scenarios where if Bitcoin's going to 9,000, I've got to imagine that Ethereum probably breaks lower and maybe tests this $650 level at some point before the bottom is in. But again, longer term, I love Bitcoin. I love Ethereum. You just got to ride the rocky rail here in the near term. Sit back and buckle up. I think 2023 will be as volatile, if not more than 2022. I think that gold likely starts to perform much, much better as we start seeing the economy kind of move towards a recession. My guess is Bitcoin bottoms in 5 to 6 months, down about that 9,000 realm. And ultimately, we will see that regulation. I think you'll see a framework of regulation within 3 months. And let's all keep our fingers crossed that it's good regulation.
So could this downtrend continue throughout 2023? And could we see a $9,000 Bitcoin before it's all over? Put your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.